One, I just want to remind everybody who is a Thrivent member that if you have not applied yet for your 2018 action teams, you have 2 days left. They do not have to be used in 2018, but just applied for. You can use them anyway, or like all the way through April, but just applied for in 2018. So don't forget to put that amazing resource to good use. The only other thing I have for you, friends, is the connection card. And for anyone who is new here to the river, this is how we help get connected with you, how we help share who we are, and just keep everyone up to date. So if you have new information, if you have anything that you want to request information about, this is how you do it. This will also be collected at our time of offering, which will come later in the service, so you have some time to fill this out. Also on the back, there is a spot for prayer requests or any praises. So if there's anything that you want our prayer team partnering with you on this week, please fill that out. Today, as many of you know, Pastor Zach and his wife Sarah are busy hanging balloon drops across Wisconsin. So thousands upon thousands of balloons are being hoisted into the air to prepare for tomorrow's celebration. And so we have our wonderful elder Kris Johnson here today to share a message. But before he does, in honor of Kris Johnson, I want to share a joke. Are you ready? What did the little champagne bottle call his father? Pop! Is it less funny when they actually get it? I don't know how that works. Everyone, Kris Johnson.
Thank you, Kate. Very good. Thanks for joining us this morning, everyone. Could you pray with me while we start off this message today? Father, I thank you for a beautiful, crisp, sunny December morning. And I just thank you so much for what the holidays represent: hope and grace, eternal life for all, Lord, who accept you. And I just so grateful for the gift that you've given to us, Lord, to a world that is looking and searching. We just really pray, Father, for this new year coming up for all of us. And I just really pray for direction and wisdom. And we just thank you for the ability to just see a new year come. We just lay this morning before you in your name. Amen. Last year, I had the opportunity to take my family to California for 10 days. We had my wife and our 3 kids, and we also had my father and mother-in-law and my sister-in-law go with us. And one of my friends from high school has a beautiful home in Dana Point, Orange County, California. And there were some very memorable moments that I had with my family. There were 2 in particular that really stuck out. One of them was towards the beginning of the trip. We are very big water people. We love the water. My son is a year-round swimmer. He swims for a USA swim team, and he also is on the high school team here in Elkhorn. But the rest of our family just enjoys being in the water. Whether it's a pool or an ocean or a lake, we just love it. And one of the first days that we were down in California, we had the chance to go to the Dana Point Public Beach, which was a beautiful, sprawling beach. And when we were down there that day, the wind was just perfect for body surfing. And we had the ability to spend pretty much we were there for probably 4 or 5 hours body surfing. And so my son and I went way out into the ocean, and we were just getting pounded by these waves. One of the things that I noticed when we were on that beach was there was a large lifeguard tower. And what I noticed is that they kept changing these flags. They had different colored flags as the water conditions started to change. And as the day progressed, we noticed that the flag colors kept changing. And the waves were starting to be maybe, I'm going to say 3 or 4 feet. And as the day progressed, they started to get to be like 6, 8. Some of them, I think, were pretty close to 10 feet high. And I can remember as we were getting into more of the day, I looked back and I could tell that we were getting farther and farther away from the coast or the beach. And I remember telling my son Hunter, hey, grab my hand, I'm going to pull you in. And we got to just be careful because the undertow was getting so strong. I can remember it was probably the last couple waves that we were out there, and one of the waves grabbed me and pulled me under, and I wound up putting myself into a fetal position. I locked myself in, and I will never forget the power of this wave, where it pushed me this way and that way and up and down. And I was so afraid that it was going to just knock me right into the base of the shoreline, because I can remember when we walked out there, there were rocks. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but I will tell you, it knocked the wind out of me, and I couldn't believe the force of that water. Going into the next part of the trip, the second day that was the most memorable was towards the end, when we went to Santa Monica. And as you walk on this boardwalk, I don't know if any of you have been there, but they have one of the most beautiful boardwalks I've ever seen in my life. And as you walk on this huge boardwalk, and to give you the perspective of how large this boardwalk is, the police down there actually patrol it with a pickup truck. I mean, they drive it right on this thing that goes all out into the Pacific Ocean. And as you walk onto that boardwalk, there is a huge sign that says, "You have now come to the end of Route 66. And as I looked over this gorgeous Pacific Ocean, and you look both ways and you see how it just cascades across the California coastline, and it goes into Highway 1, into Laguna Beach and Malibu, you were just in awe of how huge this thing is, and you feel about this big. The reason I bring it up is when I look at a body of water as big as the Pacific Ocean, it reminds me of a new season in life where there are many possibilities and mysteries and wonders, but there's also that uncertainty. Just like as we enter into a new year, it's a new season in life, and we all know that there are many seasons that come. There are long seasons and short seasons, some that we can calculate and measure, and others we have no idea when they're going to end. And as I started thinking about the passage that we're going to be talking about today in Luke 2, we're going to be talking about a season in life for both Jesus and Mary that is both new and holds a lot of uncertainty for them. We're heading into a time of Jesus' life where he is a tween, what we would call him now. He's 12 years old, and he's just becoming almost a teenager. He's becoming a man in that culture. There are things that are changing in his life. And then as a parent, for Mary, you don't hear a lot about Joseph in the scriptures, but you hear a lot about Mary and how her reactions are with Jesus and the things that are going on in his life. You see the response that these two people have to each other, and they start to understand where God's plan is in this new season in life. If you have your Bibles, if you want to open them to Luke 2, but they'll also be up on the screen. And we're going to start in verse 41. Now, this is a time where people are gathering in Jerusalem for the festival of Passover. And this is a time where masses upon masses of people are coming there to celebrate Passover with their relatives and their friends. In verse 41, it says, "Every year Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to the festival according to the custom. After the festival was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they were unaware of it." Now, I know sometimes people will ask, how in the world would they not know that their kid was with them? Okay, so maybe many of you know this, but when people would travel to Jerusalem for Passover, they were in a midst of probably hundreds, if not thousands of people. It was like a massive caravan. And it would have been very easy for their kids to go play with cousins or relatives or aunts or uncles, and they really would have no idea if someone wasn't immediately in their presence. So it would be very easy for that to happen. Thinking he was with their company, they traveled on for a day, and then they began looking for him among the relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him, and after 3 days they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. All right, now I'm going to stop there for a minute. This is a time where Mary is understanding that she is going to have to start to let go of some of the control that she has over Jesus, because he's not really a child anymore. He's becoming a man. He's starting to understand his real purpose of why he's here on earth, and he's starting to mingle with some of the religious leaders and the people who are very respected of that day. His understanding of spiritual things, as we're going to find out, are just unimaginable for someone of that age, probably even for people who are adults. He's starting to come into his own, and he's starting to understand what his purpose is. Mary, of course, if you have children, it's very hard to let go of that, because we as adults know that the world can be a very dangerous place. There are influences and people and things that happen that we don't want our kids to experience. And Mary is starting to kind of let go of that vice grip. I mean, she's been responsible for raising him, seeing him as a baby and a toddler and a young boy, to now becoming a man. Last year at this time, as we were ending 2017 and starting 2018, my wife and I were confronted with something the very first week of the new year. As we were celebrating Christmas of 2017, we had noticed that there were some symptoms that my son, at that time was 15 years old, was having. He was starting to lose a lot of weight. His swimming, he just couldn't keep up, and he couldn't concentrate, and there were just things that we were noticing in him that we couldn't quite figure out. And at first we thought it was just the hard regimen that he had of working out and swimming year-round. And my wife, right around this time, a year ago, just really felt that there was something wrong. And I had gone to Sunday morning service just like this. I'd gone early to help set up, and for whatever reason, I didn't have my phone, or it wasn't on, and someone walked up to me and says, "Kris, you got to go home right away." My wife had the foresight to go to a Walgreens and to buy a blood meter that measures the blood sugar, in a human body. And she measured it and took several measurements, and it was like 3 times what a normal human blood sugar should be. So with that week, we sent him up to Children's Hospital, and it was confirmed that he had type 1 diabetes. Now, type 1, if you're not familiar with it, is very different than type 2. Type 1 is a type of diabetes that there's nothing you can do. It isn't because of diet or lack of exercise. It has to do with the fact that something burns out in your pancreas. It could be a past virus or an illness. They really don't know what causes it. But for some reason, something burns out in that organ, and it does not generate the sugar, the blood sugar that's needed to regulate the body accurately. And so we wound up going up there, and we went through a series of tests, and I can remember thinking to myself, wow, what a way to start 2018. A time when you think you're going to have a fresh start, and there's all these mysteries and possibilities and unknowns. Never would I have thought that my son's life or our life was going to change forever with a diagnosis of an illness like this. The day that I remember the most was walking out of Children's Hospital, and for those of you who have been there, there is a very large glass catwalk that goes from the hospital to the parking structure. And we were carrying trays of all this medicine and syringes and everything, and tears are going down my face, and I looked at my son and I said, I'm thankful we're walking out of here, because there's a lot of families and kids that are not going to be walking out of this building. And I will tell you that as the weeks and the months went on, I questioned God, why would you do this? Why would you do this to us? There were things that I was concerned about, like, are we going to be able to manage this? Are we going to know what to do for him? How is Hunter going to handle it? And I know one of the things that he was so concerned about was his swimming. And as we learned and turned out that this type of illness actually would benefit from the type of swimming and the hard workout regimen that he had. But there were all these unknowns, and I could tell that on my son it was weighing on him, because he loved swimming and his team relied on him, and he wanted to see this happen. But I could just tell it was weighing on him, and he had had a break from swimming for a while, so we really had no idea what was going to happen until the next meet. So we started doing the injections and doing all the regulating and everything that was needed to do it, and he continued on with his workouts. And we got to the point where the next swim meet happened down in Racine. And I can remember as that meet started, he came up and he wanted me to pray with him, and so I did. And I can remember seeing him walk back onto the deck of the pool. And I could just tell that the stress and the strain was on him, because he had no idea what was going to happen with that first meet after being diagnosed with this illness. So I'm going to stop there, and I want to go back to Luke, and I'm going to tell you how this story ends. So as Jesus is starting to settle in to his duty and what God had called him to do as his son, you could see that he's starting to blend into all the areas that he needs to be, dealing with religious leaders and people who are highly respected. But he also has to, obey his parents. He's a child. And it's hard to grasp sometimes for me to think that here the Son of God is a human being just like us, who has to go through the same things that we have to go through, the insecurities and the abuse of people, dealing with a system that I have a hard time believing, because the Jewish culture back then was very rigid and hard. People were not treated with respect back then. Especially women were not treated with respect. As we get into verse 48, it says, when his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have anxiously been searching for you." "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. "Didn't you know that I had to be in my father's house?" But they did not understand what he was saying to them. Then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them, but his mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. Now, I will tell you that having a 12-year-old son who's going toe-to-toe with those people in that type of environment, having the knowledge and the courage to do what he did, is pretty amazing. But I will tell you, the thing that actually just blows my mind away is the fact that Mary had the insight to start to let go of that control. As a father of 3, you start to see things happen in your kids' lives. My son got his driver's license this year, and I will tell you, it was very hard to see him drive away for the first time. I kind of felt like one of those parents in those Subaru commercials, where the kid's going off to college and they play this very sad music, and you're just like, I'm that parent now, where you're letting go of that control because you don't know what's going to be happening. But both Mary and Jesus had that insight where it's like, this is a new season. This is a new time. There are opportunities and there are mysteries and there are unknowns. And I will tell you from a personal perspective, I tend to focus on the unknowns rather than what the opportunities and the possibilities can be in a new season. Because deep in my heart, I don't like change. Deep in my heart, I like consistency. I want things to be the same. I want to make sure that it's safe and comfortable. But we all know that life isn't like that, right? It's not safe. It's not comfortable. The only constant is change, and it's always going to be that way. And it seems like as time goes on, the change gets faster and faster and faster, doesn't it? Technology and culture and all the things that are pounding against you, hitting the very core of your faith and what you believe. That's the world we live in. And the Bible promised us that there were going to be trials and tribulations. He promised us that that was going to happen. And so far, he's been true to his word. When I look at the end of this story, and I see those last two verses, and I want to read them again. Then he went down to Nazareth with them, and he was obedient to them. But his mother treasured all the things in her heart. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. Those two verses just give me chills because I think to myself, you've got two conflicting stories and people. You've got a child who's becoming a man who knows what he's going to have to do. You've got a mother who's realizing that her motherly role is starting to change. Her presence isn't going to be as profound and nurturing as it was before. And both of them are starting to realize that one is going to have to start grabbing onto the responsibility and the other one is going to have to start letting go. Both equally hard. Now, remember I was telling you that after I had prayed with my son at that first meet down in Racine, and I watched him go out on that pool deck, I could tell that there was a lot of pressure. And we had prayed over him, and he had been praying a lot as well on his own. That meet wound up being a huge success. Not only did his high school team win that meet, but as the next 2 months went on, their team went on to win conference and sectionals, and they did the best they ever had done in the state of Wisconsin in school history. My son wound up being voted the conference athlete of the year. And it was just a matter of probably 8 weeks prior that we were worried if he was even going to swim at all. One of the things that just was, it's hard for me to even say, my son had been with his girlfriend several months ago, and somehow this conference meet that had happened, it was a huge upset when they won this, and the team wound up beating kids that in some ways they had no business beating. My son wound up being a part of that, and he wound up beating kids that were 2 years older than him. And he had said to his girlfriend, he says, that wasn't me swimming. It was God. As a father, I can't ask for more. And I will tell you, when we started 2018, never in my life did I think we would experience that. So I ask you, as you start 2019, and as you leave a year that you've known, and all of us have gone through horrible trials or things that we look at and question God and say, why did I go through that in 2018? There's always a comfort level, isn't there? The pain that we know winds up being the pain that we're comfortable with. Isn't that kind of how it is? It's always a nerve-wracking thing to go into 2019 or a new year and think, what on earth are we going to be going through? The possibilities, the opportunities, the mysteries, the unknown, it's scary. It's scary. And so I ask you now, as you start a new season in life, you start to look at the things of your life, taking inventory of where you've been in the last year. You're not a different person than you were a year ago. Where are you? You've learned some things, gone through some things, had some blessings and victories, challenges, overcome fears. Maybe you haven't overcome some of those fears. I don't know. But what is your personal perspective of 2019? Where do you sit with God? Where's your personal inventory of where things are going to be heading? Do you focus on the possibilities? Do you focus on the mysteries, the unknown, the opportunities? Or are you still sitting back in 2018 comfortable with some of the things that you know, whether it is a pain or a weakness or some insecurity? There's a whole new season, a whole new Pacific Ocean now that's in front of you, waiting for you to discover it. I know that the political climate that we live in right now is pretty unprecedented. I don't fall on either side of the spectrum. I really don't. And as I've been looking at the news, and I work with financials where I work, and we deal with a lot of big companies, and there's a lot of uncertainty that's happening right now as 2019 is approaching us. And I am a business news junkie. I love business news. I read all of it. And there was a quote that came just this past week as I was preparing this message, and I thought it was incredibly fitting for what we were talking about today. I know many of you have heard of Warren Buffett, of course. Perhaps arguably one of the most successful investors in history. And it usually ebbs and flows with him, but in most cases he's in the top 3 of the wealthiest men in the world. When I hear or read something that Warren Buffett says, I tend to take notice because he is a very simple man who has lived in the same home in Omaha, Nebraska for the last 60 years. And the guy is phenomenally talented managing money. And he was asked about all the volatility that he has seen culturally, politically, geopolitically, all the things that are happening in our world as we start to enter 2019. And he wound up quoting something that I thought was just fabulous. This is a 19th century poem by Rudyard Kipling. And I'm going to read this twice, but I'm going to read it slowly the first time. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, and if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, yours and the earth and everything that's in it. I'm going to read it one more time. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs, and if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, if you can think and not make your thoughts your own, your aim, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. I know that that's not a scripture verse, but I will tell you it has a lot of biblical undertones. We're made and wired to trust God. I can tell you that there is literally nothing we can have control of on this earth and in this life other than how we react to things. That is the only thing we have control of, is how we react to it. We know that the world is unpredictable. We know that the world is on a foundation that is shaky and cracking. It is a world that is looking for God and hope and grace. It is a place that you are not going to find it unless Jesus is the center of your life. I can promise you that. As you start to look into 2019 and you look back at 2018, don't get comfortable with the past. Embrace the future. Embrace what God has for you. And don't focus so much on the unknowns. And I'm saying this for myself too, because it's very easy to do it. There is a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of opportunities. And there are so many promises that God has for us as his children. Grab it and use it and keep it as we enter a new season.